Back in high school, I was not your average guy. I was very well known. I wouldn't say popular because it has a bad stigma, but you could say my name to anyone and they'd know who I was. I was very quirky from the way I talked to people to the way I dressed, the way I presented myself, and especially my means of carrying my school supplies around. See, I didn't have a backpack like everyone else. Instead, I used a gym duffel bag. This thing was huge. It was black and red and I called it the battering ram. Not a day went by when I didn't hit someone or knock someone to the ground. It wasn't my fault. I wore it over my shoulder, and as I weaved through the crowds, this thing would pick up momentum. And every day, some unlucky soul would get hit. Lightning never struck the same place twice, mind you, but nobody who did get hit was ever happy. One day, I had just gotten out of Spanish class. My Spanish class believed in a system called ACTFL, which is total language immersion. For the entire duration of the class, we were not to utter a single English word, only Spanish, and I was very good at Spanish. So every day after class was over, people would say goodbye to me in the hallways, being as it was my last class of the day, and I would reply in Spanish. It took me a while after class to break the immersion and get back to English, which is pretty common for bilingual people. Well, one day, I get out of the class and I'm speaking with my buddy only in Spanish while I was walking to my bus. He turns and heads in a different direction and says goodbye. I turn to him and say adios and then turn back. And right then, as I turned, my battering ram of a duffel bag flies forward and knocks a mentally handicapped student to the ground. And it hit her hard. Not only did she fall over, she flew back a few feet. She sits up, looks very unhappy, stares at me and screams, "Ouch! What gives?" Without even thinking, I said, "Oh, lo siento," which means I'm sorry in Spanish. And in the most annoyed tone I've ever heard, she screams, "Wow, he didn't understand a word I said." When I was about 15, I was at the fair with my family. It was summer, school was out, and we liked to enjoy the fair every now and then. Well, I ran into a school friend and he invited me to play pool with him. Now, I'm pretty decent at pool, but I didn't want to pay $1 for a game that I could play for free. Even back then, I had a PC gamer mindset. He told me that he would pay for me to play, and we started. We were talking as my mother was looking at some rock exhibits, and my brother was chilling out next to me. Well, these two girls came up, probably around 13, 14, and they approached my brother. They said this, "Hey, so our friend thinks you're really cute and was hoping that maybe you wanted to be her boyfriend." Now, I started dying, and I was being really obnoxious now that I think about it, but I was saying, "Come on, Dev, go for it." And he was so embarrassed, and eventually he told them that he wasn't looking for a girlfriend. They then turned to me and said, "What about you? She thought you were cute too." Quickly, I replied, "Cute or cuter?" "Just cute," they said. "Nope, nope, go. I can't just be cute, I gotta be cuter." "Are you serious?" they asked, and this is what I said next. "Look, if your friend doesn't have the balls to come up to me and ask me herself, no, go." So they start to take off, and my friend from school screams out, "Hey, what about me? What did she think about me?" They keep walking, but one turns and screams back, "She wants a boyfriend, not a girlfriend." Poor guy. He was really unlucky when it came to stuff like that. The last story happened when I was 8 years old. I feel like everyone has that one story that nobody believes, you know? Like, it's so crazy that everyone thinks you're lying no matter what. Well, this is my story. I lived in a place called Sardine Creek in a small town called Gold Hill. Now, inside the city of Gold Hill, there are a lot of people and food places, but the further out you go, the more rural it gets. Well, Sardine Creek was very rural. We had quite a lot of land to ourselves. A 2-bedroom house, a creek down by the bank, and 2 fields separated by a long driveway. But down by the trees that led to the creek, my brother and I had a sandbox that we would play in. When you were young, sand is like the best thing ever. It reminds you of the beach, and I played in it almost every day with my brother, whom at the time was about 6 or 7. Well, one day we were playing in the sandbox, and we started to hear a familiar noise. Now, living where we did, you hear a lot of nature-esque noises, turkeys and deer, raccoons, birds, but rarely we would hear a mountain lion or a bear. We lived right on this creek, and this creek was where a lot of animals would go to drink and hunt. So we were never very far away from wildlife, but this noise was different. It wasn't the kind of noises that you'd hear in the wild. It's more the kind of noise that you'd expect from any house in any part of the world. The sound of a kitten calling out. But not just one. It sounded like there were 6 or 7 of them. Now, when we started to hear this, we became confused. Again, we were very young, and my brother became convinced that someone had dumped a box of kittens down by the creek. See, he wanted to go check and see if they were okay, but I grabbed him and stopped him. I remembered that we lived near mountain lions, and I told him that it was more likely that they were mountain lion cubs instead. And if he got close, we would be killed. But my brother was too young to think rationally. He said that if they were mountain lion cubs, I'll just leave them alone and they won't attack me. And I said, no, David, if they are mountain lion cubs, the mother will be close by and she would kill us. To this, he rebutted, okay, if I see that they're mountain lions, I'll look at the mom and she'll know that I don't want to harm her cubs and I'll leave. I was unable to convince him that he was wrong. I couldn't leave him either because I was also a little curious and I didn't want to leave and let my brother die. We couldn't see through the trees that led to the creek. You had to squeeze through, but before David could even make it to the tree line, we heard the deepest and loudest roar that we've ever heard. We had nothing else to do but run. We ran all the way past our house, up to the neighbor's, and pounded on his door. He wasn't home, and we hid there for a while. Realistically, if the mountain lion wanted to, it would have killed us, but I think it was more focused on the safety of its cubs rather than a dinner for them. We ran back to the house and told our father, and he went into the woods with a rifle, but found nothing. They moved along. That wasn't the last time we saw a mountain lion, but it was the closest that I've ever come to death by wildlife.